God help me, but in this video, I'm going to defend AI. Kind of, a bit. For those who are new to this channel, I have to start by saying this is a real outlier for me. I think that large language models and generative AI shit, Grok, Claude, ChatGPT, I think these are garbage services for garbage people. They steal from real artists and writers in order to allow lazy, untalented hacks to feel as though they have creative abilities, and the end product they produce is most often soulless trash, and for that, they're destroying the environment. All that said, these shitty tools are not to blame for the recent spike in deaths from foragers eating poisonous mushrooms here in California. At least not necessarily. Usually I have a stupid news headline to debunk here, but in this case, the misinformation I'm seeing is actually not being spread by the mainstream media. Not because it's misinformation per se and they don't spread that. It's probably because the mainstream media tends to be overly celebratory of LLMs, maybe because the tech companies own the mainstream media and or because the mainstream media is increasingly using these garbage production devices to produce their garbage content. No, I mostly see this misconception on social media outlets. Every time a new death is reported, there's a flood of popular comments blaming idiots for using AI to identify mushrooms to eat, often accompanied by this comic, which is clearly made using AI. Holy shit, I am losing my mind. There is something the mainstream media is getting wrong in these cases, but I'll get to that in a minute. In full disclosure, I am not an experienced professional forager. In the past few years, I've gotten into foraging as a hobby. After I bought a house in the Oakland Hills, I got really interested in what was growing in my backyard, as well as in the vast parks that Indy and I hike in several times a week. I started by learning to ID native flowers, then other plants and trees, then native insects and birds, and then in the past few years, edibles. Not edibles like the gummies I enjoy on the weekend, edibles that people have been foraging in this area for centuries. And in full disclosure, when it comes to trying to identify plants and birds and things, I do occasionally use apps like Merlin Bird ID and Seek. These are often a good starting point so that I can nail down exactly what species I'm seeing. It's not always right. It's often wrong, but it's a good place to start, and it helps me record photos, organize them, and with apps like iNaturalist, I can also get human input on them. Last year, I took a class on the sustainable harvesting of local mussels, as well as various seaweeds and some wild land-based plants. Not only were the experts running the class informative, but they encouraged us to text them if we have any questions, especially when it comes to making sure we know we're collecting something like wild carrots or yarrow and not poisonous hemlock, which can look similar and grow in similar places. As I mentioned in a previous recent video, they also recommended foraging books, encouraging us to buy and study them rather than relying on websites, which are increasingly overrun by LLMs, providing inaccurate and sometimes dangerous misinformation. On their recommendation, I got this book on local mushrooms, and since the rains started last autumn, I've been using it to identify the various forms of fungi that Indy and I encounter on our hikes. When I say identify, I mean just identify. I take photos, I make notes, I may dig up a mushroom to help identify it, but I do not pick mushrooms to eat because I'm still new to all this, and also because it's actually illegal to harvest mushrooms in many of the places that we hike. When it comes to foraging mushrooms, experts always insist correctly that you should never ever eat anything that you have not identified with 100% certainty, because there are many species that can look alike, and some are delicious and others can cause gastronomical distress in some or all people, and yes, some can kill you. Here in the Bay Area, there are several well-known deadly species like the Western Destroying Angel and the death cap, which is the one responsible for nearly 40 poisonings and 4 deaths here in the past 3 months. Okay, death caps are incredibly toxic. Within a few hours or up to a day after consuming them, they can cause severe abdominal pain, vomiting, seizures, liver and kidney damage, and a slow, painful death. There is no way to prepare them by freezing or cooking or doing anything in order to make them safe to eat. It's possibly the most dangerous mushroom in the world. And this past rainy season, conditions were perfect here in the Bay Area for them to sprout up in record numbers. Pretty scary, right? But the reason I am making this video is actually because I want you to be not afraid. I know I'm not doing a great job of it so far. Stay with me. Before I get into it, I will once again reiterate that you should never eat anything you forage if you are not 100% sure what it is and what it will do to your body. Even safe wild mushrooms can cause people gastronomic distress if they aren't used to eating that species. If this topic interests you, I highly recommend you splurge on an in-person foraging class with a local expert who can teach you what you need to know to get started. That said, there is no tasty edible mushroom here in the Bay Area that resembles the death cap. None. If you are in this area and getting started on mushroom foraging, the first thing you should learn is how to identify amanitas like the death cap. And then you should learn how to identify all of the fairly easy to see delicious species like the California morel, which, as you can see here, looks absolutely nothing like a death cap. No knowledgeable local forager will ever be poisoned because they picked a death cap thinking it was something edible. That's why I do want to push back on some of the mainstream media's reporting on this, like this local news report that claims knowing the difference between an edible mushroom and a toxic one is challenging even for experienced foragers. That is simply not true here in the Bay Area. We are very lucky to have forests full of delicious mushrooms that are very easy for experienced foragers to identify. I also want to note that you won't be poisoned by simply handling a death cap. They don't ooze poison that seeps into your bloodstream. You can touch them, you can dig them up to examine their base, which is an important step for proper mushroom identification. And you know what? You don't even have to wash your hands afterwards. The only way to be poisoned by a death cap is to eat it and allow its toxin to start attacking your guts from the inside. So, why are all these people eating and dying from death caps this season? It is most likely because those people come from places like parts of East Asia or Mexico, where not only are there no death caps, but there are edible species that look very similar to death caps. People who grow up in those areas learned that after it rains, an easy and delicious meal pops up in the forest, and all you have to do is go out and collect them and chow down. For instance, that's exactly what happened to at least one family down in Salinas who are from Oaxaca. They survived, but only thanks to a liver transplant. We have an incredibly diverse population here in Northern California, many of whom hail from those areas. Combine that with high grocery prices and weather conditions that allowed a bumper crop of death caps, and bam, a rash of poisonings that could have been prevented with a public health education program. Having learned all of this in the past few years, I've come to think of foraging as a skill that's actually very handy to have, even if you don't think you'll need it, like knowing how to swim, or if you're here in the US, knowing how to handle a gun. You may not be interested in eating anything you find outside of a Safeway, but you might have immigrant friends who could use that knowledge before the next potluck. And if you have children or pets who like to put random things in their mouths, it's worth knowing what to be on the lookout for and how to gather and examine items in order to identify them for medical treatment. And of course, should one of our many possible apocalypses ever come to pass, wouldn't it be nice to still be able to make a tasty risotto? Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.